Nerf pocket shotgun? So for 15 bucks, what do you get in a pocket shotgun? Well, you get the ShellStrike DS-6. I don't really know what the DS is in this case, but we're going to go ahead and liberate it from its cardboard prison and take a look at what it has to offer us. Now, I think that this is an interesting offering. Also, $15 seems to be the sweet spot for Hasbro actually delivering on some of its promises. So what do we get? Well, we've got a switch over here. We have a priming system that does auto retract and stays compact in the blaster. We have two onboard kind of shell storage, and these should be cross-compatible with the Trilogy. I hate that they're not also cross-compatible with the Sledge Fire, and then it looks like we get two shells with the blaster. Now that's a little bit of a shame because it'll hold three. I always think that that's kind of a pity when your blaster directly from the mothership can't support its own onboard storage. So pretty much exclusively for right-handed users, the ShellStrike only has this release lever on one side. This side, of course, has the paint. So they put the function and all the warning labels on the other side. I'd really like to see Hasbro getting back to painting both sides of their blasters, especially if they're going to keep beating their chest about being the best blaster brand on the face of the planet. So let's pull this all the way down and see what happens. There we go. So all the way down, only took 2 tries, and we get this setup. It's not auto ejecting, it doesn't look like. So this snaps out and we can load it up. So it looks like we have barely enough darts to load both of our 2 shells up once. Let's do that vampire speed. All right, so this kind of creaky setup here lets you take any shell designed for the ShellStrike, throw it in, and align with the Smart AR system in here. That means you don't necessarily need all 3 darts. You realistically will fire however many you have in that salvo ready to go. But this one should be fully loaded. And that's not a terrible spread for a pretty cool gimmick. I really wish that it ejected the shells like its friend, the Trilogy. However, I understand that at 15 bucks, you got to cut a few corners. The one thing that I'm a little disappointed has nothing to do with this blaster. It's that they have the same onboard capacity. They both realistically only fire up to 3 at once because there's no tube magazine, so you're manually loading your shells either way. Now that's a few different operations. You've got to click to open, unload, load, click to close, pull back and release, and then fire. So there's a lot going on to get this guy ripped and ready to go, but a pretty cool spread. Now, I honestly think that there's no real way to showcase this blaster properly inside in this setup, so we're going to take it old school. We're going to throw the GoPro on. We're going to get a chronograph out there, although I think that the ranges on this are going to suffer because of its triple shot technology. However, I really want to give you a good look at the internals and the overall kind of compact form factor, but I can tell you already that this is a gimmick that I can get behind. Let's take it outside. All right, guys, so I felt like POV was truly the best way to give you kind of an overview of how this thing is ergonomically and how funky it is, like aesthetically and in terms of how it functions and works. And I also just love any excuse to throw the camera on my forehead and take things old school. So this lever over here, again, only on this side. You push it down all the way. Sometimes it works great and pops this up. Sometimes it doesn't. It's a little upsetting that it's kind of funky that way. And you can see one of my Smart ARs down there has already started bending. That's a small flaw in the design of this blaster, kind of how this breech system works. They expect you to close it this way every time, but then it has a hard time releasing. So I feel like, sweet. I feel like without any shell in there, it'll release a little bit easier. However, you're always going to have a shell in there when you're trying to open it up and release it. Now, the prime is a little funky just because you can't really fit 2 fingers in there, so you have to fit 1 finger in, pull it back, and set it forward. However, it's not a lot of pressure required. It's a very weak sort of spring in that plunger system. Now, I don't necessarily know how that's going to translate to our ranges and performance, but again, whoop, dead dart. Again, this is a shotgun style kind of gimmicky blaster. Hey, that's kind of funky. That's a -3 Nix cage, or Nix cage negative, I guess, Op1 iteration forever ago. Huge thank you, by the way, to everyone who supported Project Nix so far. Literally never thought that we would sell over 400 of the Nix cage platform, but here we are going into run 5, and I'm just eternally grateful that you guys
love them as much as I do. It's hard to imagine when we were doing that we would be serializing in the 400s at this point. So let's throw that in there. And let's just kind of give you an idea of what our spreads are. Say hello to Jinx and her HVZ sock bomb toy. You know she's a Nerf dog because she thinks all sock bombs are toys. And that's actually a pretty decent segue. Again, like, come on, open up. A pretty decent segue into where I feel like the ShellStrike would shine. I think it's small enough to be holsterable and quirky enough with its spread to be a pretty cool HVZ blaster. So the ranges in triplicate are really only about 20 feet, which is a shame, but makes a lot of sense when you think about how a plunger volume this small is going to shoot 3 darts instead of just 1. Now I think, or I hope, that if I load up just 1, the Smart AR is going to take good care of us, and we're going to be able to fire just 1 dart. And see, a single shot is actually much better. So this is sort of a nod to the community in that there are a bunch of people making 3D printed shells that'll either fire half-length darts or take brass kind of sniper shells, or they'll fire cut-down megas. And I guess if you wanted to be a particularly gross individual, you could fire ultra darts as well. So let's load up a single here and put a couple over the chronograph. We actually have a Pro Dart here, although Pro Dart's barrel fit isn't necessarily ideal for stock Hasbro plastic. So let's throw our single shell in and try and get some chronograph readings in that form. So 53, again, this is not a blaster with performance in mind. And I'm realizing now that as silly as it is to go through all those operations, if you only have 1 shell, there's no sense in taking that 1 shell out. You can just, oh no. Well, I thought there wasn't. You can just continue to fire by loading the 1 shell that you have in. So because of the access that this has to its front loading mechanism through its very open barrel, it's pretty easy to treat this one like a front loader and fire it that way. Yo, shout out to SS Airsoft. Pretty cool airsoft arena here in Georgia. If you're going to their anniversary, I should be there. I think it's late March this year, maybe March 28th. I'll see you guys there. Spread is solid. It's enough that if a zombie was running towards you kind of crouched, I think that you could almost guaranteed hit him. Now, if you didn't, though, the amount of operations it would take you to switch this out, throw it back in. I guess you're throwing it on the ground. We're trying to live and put that back in. And well, that was so tight, though. What happened, ShellStrike? So while consistency might not be its forte, again, in single shot mode, we're getting mid 50s for all of our FPSs, which isn't too terribly bad, given just how much gimmick appeal and potential, exactly mid 50s, this guy has. I think that it's fun. My only complaint is that it definitely should have come with 3 shells, but I like that this one's somewhat community friendly, even if you're going to have to really carve out a whole bunch of this Smart AR nonsense to make it so that you can fire the aftermarket shells. And then, of course, once you've done that, you can no longer do the front loading for anything other than triple darts. So you kind of have to pick. I think this one's one that you either keep stock completely and use as a goofy sidearm for zombie game modes or CQB where the spread is relevant, or you mod it completely. You take it down, add a much more powerful spring. You probably have to augment this prime here. Although I want to applaud it for its auto-retracting prime. I wish that this was a little bit crisper in terms of its action, but I think that this is quite nice in and of itself. I think that this one's great. At $15, I think that this one is a solid purchase. I know that they're also super duper pushing their extra shell setup because that's how they get you. They sell you this one for $15, and then I think it's $10 to get more shells and darts at inflated sort of Hasbro prices. But overall, I think that this one's a solid pickup. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you'd like to pick up one of your very own, I'll put a link in the description box below. If I can find an Amazon link, that helps support the channel. And if it's a Walmart link, that helps support corporate America. So one way or the other. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, much love. Nerf on. Drac out.